Okay, I'd like to call a meeting to order.
The same
First
thing you
is,
had. You on the shores.
Come to order.
here's a roll call. Hoffman present.
Lane present.
Pass it present.
Okay. First order of business is to reorganize the board, right?
That's correct.
And so, all right, we need to elect the chair.
What?
We
Elect
need
the
to
chair.
elect a
Oh, I
chair.
make a motion to make Rich Lane chair.
I'll second that. Hearing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
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 There you go.
Thanks.
Vice chair.
Yeah. I'm going to make a motion that Gail is the vice chair.
I second that.
Okay, any discussion?
Nope.
Okay, discussion. No discussion? All those in favor?
Yeah, pass it aye.
Hoffman, aye.
Lane, aye. None opposed. Okay. So, that's that. So I guess I'll take over. The next thing on the agenda is to review the email correspondence really concerning the industrial wastewater. Right, David? I mean, is the odor complaint is...
The odor complaint's been remedied. They've changed the charcoal filters. We have record of that. The issue, and that was more of just an update, the issue here specifically is the concern of industrial wastewater discharge. On May 10th, Rich and I attended the site. We were escorted around the property and performed a visual inspection of the exterior of the building. I had emailed you all copies of the complaint associated with DEP and the response from the facility in question.
Yeah. So if you looked under tab 2, did you look at that?
Oh, okay.
Do you have it?
No, I don't have a book. There's no arrangement with it coming.
I'm sorry. Did you bring your book?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought I had brought this up. So, you know, as well, every agenda item has a tab associated with it, and when we build out the book, the agenda items correspond with those tabs.
Oh, okay, great.
So kind of if you're helping look through that process.
So under this tab, we have actually multiple things. We have the original request from the DEP to investigate. As David said, he and I went on the 10th. I didn't think David should go alone to that. You don't know how they're gonna react. So I went with him. We did speak to Matt, and we asked him a couple of specific things. One was concerning the odor complaint that was going on, because they hadn't changed, apparently their answer was they hadn't changed the carbon filters out, because one of their vendors that changed the charcoal in the filters wasn't available, or something to that effect. So we asked them when they were going to do it. They said immediately. And then, David, we also asked that they provide us a schedule and a plan, which isn't addressed in this email that she sent to you. So it's only partially responsive to the odor complaint that we asked for, and I think we will need to follow up on that, because that's one of the things that the DEP told me when I spoke to them, is ask them for their filter changing plan. And so that's what we did when we were there. And again, it's a partial response to what we asked them when we were there. And then as far as the discharge goes, this letter here, David, I don't know if you guys look in, there's a second letter
What's the date on
dated
that?
May 17th. It's an email from Lindsay Scheckler on May 17th. And this, again, I think this is actually non-responsive. Because we asked for certain things, and they didn't provide any of it. So they are required, they have a wastewater tank there that has to be cleaned on has to be emptied in accordance with the regulations on a regular basis. And part of what they have to do is keep records of that. We requested the records. They didn't provide us with any records. They stated that an employee who no longer works there made the decision to cease having the wastewater hauled away. So that begs the question, what happened to the wastewater?
How long?
But it's non-responsive in not a lot of other ways too. All kinds of questions pop into my head. They must have had records if they've had it done, and they didn't provide them, and they don't say that they have them or not. They don't even say who the contractor was. They don't say who the employee was, what position, title, or role that employee had, or how often the industrial wastewater is hauled away. Now, looking at the emails that you had sent out, going all the way back to November of 2017, when they were putting the facility in there, they made statements that there would be 80 to 100 gallons of industrial wastewater put into that tank every day. It's a 1,500 gallon tank. If you do the math, that's about emptying every 20 days. So there's a lot of questions to be answered here. At this point, I mean, I still have some more comments, but I want to ask the other board.
Where are we going with this? I mean, we discussed this in a previous meeting, and some of this was already available. What's your recommendation of what we do?
Well, I'm looking to the other board members to see what they have to say first, but.
Well, I'm not sure what procedure, but I would think we should request that, and if they don't, then don't we bump it up to, would it be DCR or DEP?
DEP, it's DEP request, so DEP, this started when DEP requested the Sterling Board of Health do the investigation. So I do have some questions on that. It's coming back to me. So, first of all, the request was received on April 23rd, and I didn't know about it till May 9th. You know, this is an aside, but I think we need a little better communication, because I would have liked to know a lot earlier than 16 days after we received it. The complaint alleges a daily release of water. That's what it says. They quote that. You know, perhaps we could have done a simple surveillance to see if that actually happened. You know, we kind of showed our cards, but you know, that's just part of it. My issue, and maybe you can answer this question, David, is they requested for us to investigate it, but I'm wondering where our authority comes from to do that. Not that I wouldn't tell the DEP that we're not going to investigate it, but according to the DEP website itself, the DEP regulates industrial wastewater. And unlike Title V, which gives us specific authority, this regulation, which is 310 CMR 18, doesn't, only in specific categories. So if there is something that says the DEP can give their authority to local boards of health, you know, I'd be interested in that. And you know, specifically, we asked them for their records, and in the regulation it says that the DEP can request the records. So, if the DEP says that we can, if there's some regulation or statute that I'm not aware of, it says the DEP allows us to do that, because they asked us, then I'd feel more comfortable, I guess I'd say that.
And to that point, I've not seen any language that specifies.
Yeah, we might want to ask Dan about that. Just so everybody, the other side of this is, this could be a serious thing, and we don't want to jeopardize it because we're demanding something that we don't have the right to demand, right? We could inadvertently hurt the investigation, and I don't want to do that. Where we do have clear jurisdiction is this issuing haulage permits for industrial wastewater. That's clear in the regulation. And I asked Kathy, we have never issued a permit for industrial wastewater hauling, which means there's a violation right there that it had to have happened.
Going back a little bit here, you'd asked about our involvement, our local involvement on this. And as I spoke to in that email that I sent out, I copied you on this. My intent was just to try and retain manifest, pumping records as such, to report back to them.
Right.
And my response from Lindsay was very, very specific, that she didn't have anything, but somewhat elusive.
Yes.
So I don't disagree that we don't have anything, that they don't have anything, or they can't produce anything at this time.
The regulation also says they have to keep them for 3 years. So that's something else to report back to the DEP. Number one.
But
I'm
even
sorry.
still, Rich, we don't know that we have the authority to do this. This may be a DEP jurisdiction, not a Board of Health jurisdiction, and that's what we need to be clear on.
Yeah, so we're on the same page. We're saying the same thing. But if they don't have them, then that's another violation of the regulation. It's not a small thing.
Can I ask, are we out of line asking for them?
Yeah, I mean, 2 meetings ago, or maybe it's 3 meetings ago, I suggested we contact them and have them come in. Now, they can refuse,
Yeah.
but I believe it's in the minutes. I mean, it's at least 2 months ago, it's maybe even 3 months ago. Otherwise, we're kind of just sitting around, well, maybe this, maybe that. They can refuse.
So what you haven't been privy to is, what I was originally provided was pumping records, septic pumping records for the septic system only, not the industrial wastewater. And my response was several months past, was those are not the records that we're looking for. And I specifically provided her the cut sheet that I sent to DEP of that industrial wastewater tank, asking her for records associated to this, or manifests associated to this tank, not your septic system. So, this is her most recent response. As I indicated, this has been going on for some time in my questioning of them.
So where I would like to go from here, this is my opinion, we'll ask the board, but I would like to get the answer from DEP. If we do have the authority to actually demand those records, on their behalf or independently, and if we do, then we do, as Alan suggested, and we request them to come in and answer directly to the board, because they have not been responsive so far.
Can I ask you a question?
Just stand up.
After we're done, I'll go to the.
I just want to know who you're talking about.
Okay, yeah. It used to be The Botanist, and they go by the name of Acreage now.
Okay. I assume so, but I wasn't sure.
So in your question to DEP, I would fill them in on what they've said to you?
Oh, yeah,
They have
you're
the
in.
records. I mean, I would give them full disclosure so they know they really need to, they have something to worry about.
So I have sent them that information,
Okay.
this email information back and forth, and, I'm waiting for a response back from them. I have not asked the question about authority, but I have asked the question if they have any further input on this.
Alan, do you have any other
Well,
suggestions? Or?
if they're in compliance they've got a record, and we're entitled to get that record. And so I would directly request the records, send them a registered letter so we know they get it, and go from there. We lose nothing. Other than if we sit and keep going around, this will go on further and further. And I think we have a public right to the records, to any record that they have regarding home. Because they have to do it through a state authorized hauler and all that kind of stuff. They can say no, they cannot respond. But otherwise, we keep going around and around.
Any other comments?
No, I agree.
Okay. So, I guess that's what we'll do, Dave. Okay? We'll write a letter demanding all the pumping records and the hauler that they're using. And, because that is one thing that is clear that they have to report to us. And they also have to report who the hauler has contracts with, where they're taking it to, so. But did you say they already said they don't have any of those records?
So they've sent me their septic system pumping records.
Right.
They sent me all that information, which is not what I've asked for, but
Yeah.
they've sent that regardless. With response to the industrial wastewater, the email that's in your packages is what she says she has, which, again, I don't see that she has any records associated with industrial wastewater. I mean, I can send her another email, registered letter or otherwise.
Yeah, but she doesn't actually say that. She's evasive, in my opinion. It says, as you are aware, we are investigating our internal procedures based upon the complaint you received. After further review, we have discovered that our previous employee, who is no longer with the company, made the decision to cease water hauling at the Sterling facility. We are currently working with a hauler to have a signed contract by early next week, with hauling resuming next week. I will forward a copy of that executed contract and subsequent manifests, not prior, subsequent manifests from the hauling company once I have receipt of same. So she never answered the question of whether or not they have records, unless there's something I'm not seeing.
I think it's my opinion is, I think it's very clear,
They don't have records.
they don't have records, and
Yeah,
she's
well-
being evasive not to say that.
I want them to say that,
Yeah.
that they don't have the
Yeah.
records, because that's something to report back. So I think we have to ask the correct question directly. We were going through a third party, right, up until Matt? Or are you,
My direct contact has been, Matt was my, for a better service third party. I have been dealing faithfully with Lindsay.
okay. Well, I think you can go back and say that this was discussed at the meeting and the board wants to ask you directly for all your pumping records that are required to be kept for the last 3 years. Okay, if the public wants to make comments, I'm going to ask everyone to go to the podium and state your name so that the camera can see you properly.
Laura Ritchie, 50 Bean Road. You're saying that they were invited to come here. Is there Alan said that
No,
they were
no,
invited.
Alan said that we should have invited them to come here.
We
I
should.
thought you said that you invited them.
No,
No, no.
They
should
decided
have.
not to come.
Should have.
We should have. This is the second meeting that we're talking about. This was
All right, because if you invite them and they decide not to come, can you subpoena them?
I think that's a question we'll look at if we come to it. I would have to ask town council that. I don't know enough about that. I don't know if we have subpoena power.
It sounds like they're violating local laws and state laws, okay, regulations, okay, regarding whatever they're not doing, okay.
Well, that's what the
they're not-
investigation is looking into.
Does that mean that they could be like shut down and cease and desist?
The DEP may be able to take action. I can't answer to that because I just don't know enough about it.
Well, those are questions to ask DP, okay, when
Correct.
David follows up with them. So, I think it's disturbing, okay, that we're hearing that we have this in our community. You know, that, we allowed them to come here to, do this business here, and they're really not being good neighbors, I guess.
Well, it's still all under investigation, right? So we have to let the investigation find out. It may be a matter of just record keeping, Maybe it was put in one file instead of the other, but we can't jump to conclusions at this point. We have to let the investigation play out.
So once it plays out and say they, hypothetically that they aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, I mean, are there fines available to give them fines? To,
I believe the DEP has that authority.
that's where your accountability comes from, is when people have to pay money.
Right.
Okay. Anybody else?
It's really my job. Yeah.
Well, I would like to get this off the dime here. I'm going to move that if we don't have the letter that was requested or alluded to in the May 17 email from Ms. Sheckler, if we don't have that in hand by June 5th, we send them a registered letter saying we want to talk to them. Take that time. If we don't get a response, otherwise this thing will never get off the dime.
Yes.
I mean,
Well, I understand where you're coming from, Alan. I just want to make sure that we're actually authorized to do that. Because,
Well, the pumping records would be a public document. That's a public document, even if it's not a public document with us. It is a public document and it can be asked for.
so I'm going to go to the regulation, just to be clear. And this is, if you go to 18.09, it says, under number 1, maintain the following records at the facility for the retention time specified herein, and make these records available to department personnel upon request. And when you look up in definition what department is, it's the DEP. So that's why my question comes up. 'Cause
Well, then, I mean, we write a letter to DEP and copy it to these people and ask for if they're in compliance, period. I mean, if you don't force the issue, we'll be back here month after month. But,
If you don't force an issue, they'll just do what they want and figure they can get away with it all the time, and that's what we're supposed to not let happen.
So, we do have, okay. We had a motion, hadn't been seconded, we still discussed it, but I kind of like the direction that you were just saying, Alan, that we write a letter to the DEP saying, and CC Lynn Sheckler, saying that they were not responsive to our request for the records.
just see if they've been responsive to DEP. We want to know whether DEP has.
Yeah, I was getting to that. And we'll ask DEP if they have any records. And if they do, we would like to see them. And, if not, can the department request them, or request them from the entity, Acreage? I forgot the name.
What was the citation? 18, what was that number?
18.09, paragraph 1.
Is it necessary that Lynn be CC'd in on this, or should this communication be specifically between the town and DEP? I mean, I think, I'm not opposed to CCing her, but I think it's you know, we need to know that, do we have the authority or does DEP have the authority to ask for these records?
Well, that's how I started this conversation, yeah.
You know, I think if we have the authority, then we write a letter to her, giving her a timeline to say, yes, you have them or don't you have them, and we need to have them by this deadline, otherwise, whatever. But I think we need to know first is, or at least my opinion is that we need to know first, who has the authority? And I know that the code specifically states DEP, but
And that's how I started off the conversation. I proposed that we ask DEP, and if DEP says, yes, you have the authority because we've asked you to investigate it, you're our agent. If we are the agent of the DEP at this point, then we have the authority, and then we write the letter directly to them, right? But, and then we have DEP's assurances in our back pocket that we're doing the right thing the right way. And one is contingent on the other, Alan, so we don't have to wait till the next meeting to write the letter. If David hears back from the DEP and they say, go, then we do it. But we can, is that palatable?
Well, I'm always more aggressive than that, but I'll go along with whatever you want.
Okay.
Because if the letter exists, then we have the right to request it. It's a public document. It's a public document regardless whether it's DEP or us who holds that letter. So we have the right to ask for the letter.
Well, I think we would have the right to request the documents from DEP, but not from the private entity.
Okay.
That's,
I'd just like to move this off the dime. That's all.
and I understand what you're saying, Alan.
Nick Shepherd, is there anything in the original agreement or the subsequent agreement with these people that allows them to do certain things that we haven't looked into? The first agreement said that they would pay us a certain amount of money, and I forget how much that was now, but it was a substantial amount of money. And the second agreement was if they could go into the retail distribution of the product that they're selling, they'd give us an additional $100,000. That I remember from a town meeting. Is anything in that agreement give them some leeway here? And I think that you need to discuss that to find out if in fact that does give them some kind of a, you know, the ability to do what they're
They,
doing.
it's
So-
the company or the DEP? Who's the
the
they?
they is the,
They, as the original company was, you mentioned their name, and then the new company, I'm assuming that all of the stuff to the new company was rolled over to them. And so that they're paying us, I don't know exactly how much they're paying us, do you know, Joe?
$100,000 a year and cannabis impact fee, but it ended last year.
Oh, is that right? Okay, so up until last year, they were paying us $100,000 a year.
this is all regulatory matters.
Yeah.
So I don't.
Well, I'm just wondering if anything in that agreement allowed them to do something that you're trying to, you know, get out of them, and that they're gonna say, well, we're paying you all this money, so we don't have to do this.
Well, I can request that of the select board. They're the ones that make the agreement.
Okay, just a thought, just to keep it in.
One last comment.
Yeah.
The original owners who owned it for a very, very long time, both been through the facility, they have made the records available to us. So, I mean, this isn't new ground with regard to the relationship between the town and the facility. It's new ground with respect to a new owner. So I just think we got to get it off the dime. That's my, I've said that 3 times.
So are we in agreement with what we're going to do with this?
I think that I don't have a problem with seconding Alan's motion about sending the letter. I really, because if it's a public document, we should be able to ask for it. And if they give us a hard time, then we go to DEP, they refuse.
Okay.
Because they're, you know,
Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
yeah, I second it.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
That's right.
I'm going to abstain. So that's what we're going to do? Write a letter
To holdings, I mean, to acreage.
to Acreage, okay? Requesting all their pumping records, which they're It should be for the last 3 years, according to the regulation that they're required to keep, so. All right,
And copy to the company, right? I mean, we're gonna send a letter to the company, copy it to DEP.
Well, I have a question because we're dealing with complaints. Do you have a method for when you get a complaint in that you let the board know as soon as you have a complaint so we know this is a complaint? Like, I know in Millbury we used to email, a copy of the complaint was sent.
Typically, depending on what the complaint is, you'll get an email. Public records, you'll get an email with a response saying that we've complied. That's been the process.
And this isn't a typical complaint. This was actually a request to do an investigation from a complaint that the DEP received, just to be perfectly clear, so. And
I think, you know, again, to like the way we had this, on this particular, I just odor complaints. You know, they come in on the phone and we just verbally express them at a public meeting in our findings as well.
Okay, so we're going to move on. The next item on our agenda is this review and discuss the open meeting law complaint dated May 13th, 2024. The board has received an open meeting complaint concerning the letter that Alan wrote to DCR. I will read the complaint. At the April 11th, 2024 Board of Health meeting, the chair of the Board of Health made a heretofore unknown Board of Health correspondence with the Massachusetts DCR public. By the word unknown, it is used in context that was not only unknown to the general public, but also to the other two board members. This correspondence, in the form of a single-page letter on Board of Health letterhead, signed by the chair of the Board of Health, is available upon request. From my open meeting law training, it's clear to me that the action by Mr. Hoffman violates the spirit and principle, if not the letter, of the open meeting law. The purpose of the open meeting law is to ensure transparency in the deliberations on which public policy is based. Mr. Hoffman failed to meet this tenet. Special note should be made of a phrase in the closing sentence of the letter, i.e., we, emphasis added, invite any comments from DCR on this issue. The key word, of course, is we, and as such, in view of the Board of Health letterhead and the chair's closing salutation, any reasonable person would certainly assume that the letter was fully authorized by the complete board, or at least a quorum thereof, but it was not. Indeed, the employees of the Mass DCR to whom the letter was addressed fully believed that the communication was approved by the full board. The two other members of the board never saw the letter until the occasion of the April meeting. As such, the democratic process, assuring the public has knowledge about the considerations underlying governmental action before that action was taken, was denied. Regarding the context of this brief letter itself, this transgression is not insignificant, as the letter is replete with serious error, which is both embarrassing to the board but also to the public at large, as it proves that the chair is not properly interpreting Title V, as it cites the wrong section of Title V, that being 310 CMR 15.303 1A7, which is only to be invoked after meeting the failure criteria of 310 CMR 15.302, which Mr. Hoffman is apparently oblivious to. This unilateral Hoffman letter to the DCR is further problematic in that it comes of the heels of two very recent open meeting law violations against the Sterling Board of Health, largely attributable to the same individual, who should have studied the open meeting law thoroughly as dictated by the Attorney General's office prior to this latest infraction. Additionally, please note that Mr. Hoffman was largely responsible for the preparation of the codified Sterling Board of Health communication policy, and then he has a link to the communication policy, wherein states, among many other communication don'ts, that board members cannot engage in discussions outside of duly noticed meeting. Though the open meeting law does not address required tenets of leadership, not following one's own rules is not it. I trust that cognizant open meeting law officials take the responsible individual to task concerning this blatant violation of the basic principles of the open meeting law. So, I'm going to give the board members an opportunity to address this. I was going to give Mr. Menon opportunity first, but I'll give the board members an opportunity to address this. I would like to keep our discussion specifically about the open meeting law violation, just about the open meeting law violation. There are other things in here. I read the whole thing. There are other things in here that talk about the regulation, and really all we should focus on is the open meeting law violation allegation at this point. So obviously, Alan, I'm going to give you the floor first.
Okay, the letter dated March 28th, that was read into the records at the April meeting of the Board of Health. The we in that, and the history of that, is that Mr. Fabro is the health agent, which is not a member of the Board of Health. He's the health agent. He was contacted by the DCR representative to this area, whose name I don't have right here, saying that so this is a DCR employee.
Dave Getman.
Dave, what's his last name?
Getman.
Getman. He contacted Mr. Faber and said the DCR would like to submit a comment to the Board of Health regarding the quote, new, now not so new, regulations that were previously put into effect. So he's an employee of DCR. And David revealed that, obviously. So I sat on that for a little bit, for a couple of weeks, actually. Because, I mean, the question is this fellow speaking for himself, or is he speaking for DCR at a higher level? So that was the unresolved question. So David and I got together on the date of the letter, along with Mrs. Nickerson, who was in the office, and actually typed this letter. And so my rationale to this, sending this letter, was very simple. Is this the opinion of a lower level DCR employee, or is it the opinion of the DCR employee that's responsible for this entire area, the Wachusett watershed? So that's the purpose behind it. So we sent this letter and came back on the next day, and it's signed by Kelly Frieda, who's the regional director of DCR in this area of the state. So the we in the letter referred to Mr. Faber and I never had any other contact with anyone who was on the board. Mrs. Catalano, I never had a contact with her, I didn't have contact with Rich, and so that's basically the story. So the open meeting violation requires direct contact with a member of the board. It doesn't refer to having contacts with other people. And I mean, it's routine. I mean, I'm sure there's people in this room who have contact with the, maybe even you, Rich, who have email contacts with other members of other boards. That's not prohibited, that's allowed. And that's essentially the end of the story. There's no direct contact with any member, past or present, of the board.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, yeah.
So does that mean any of us can put a letterhead out and sign the Board of Health? And that's okay, that's not a violation, because actionable things need to be discussed at the meeting, and if you didn't discuss it off the meeting and you didn't discuss it in a meeting, then it's a violation, right?
It's not.
Why isn't it?
You're allowed to gather information. You're allowed to gather information.
But not on a letterhead?
So I'm going to intervene here because, so Alan wrote the letter, and Mr. Menon's complaint focuses on the fact that he used the word "we."
Okay.
And it would appear, to outside, and this is what Mr. Menon is alleging, that it would appear that to outside entities, when you're writing a letter on letterhead and signing it as the chairman, and you say "we," it would refer back to the board. So that's the complaint, and that's what happened. But, so is there any other thing? Okay.
I don't think it's appropriate. I mean, what was done wasn't done. I think Alan's comment at one of the meetings was it was worth it because he knew what he did was wrong. It wasn't done in the attitude of honoring the position. That's the only comment I want to say.
Okay, I'm gonna handle that. So, any other comments? Okay. So, I'm gonna make my comment. And Alan, what you did was wrong, bottom line. Okay, there's no question about it. It was wrong administratively because you violated the policy of the Board of Health. And to what Gail said, you actually did say that at the meeting. It was worth it, which is, it's not an outright admission, but it's close to one. You helped write the policies for this board. They were adopted under your position here. And to me, it's unacceptable because, quite frankly, as I said at the meeting, you could have brought it up, discussed it at the board meeting, and outvoted me. No question about it. And you could have sent this the proper way. But you chose not to. So that was wrong. It was wrong ethically, too. Because no member should attempt to speak for the whole body. And that's right in the policy as well. And you actually kind of used the DCR a little bit, because even your letter requesting this is a little questionable. I'll say that.
We were asked to request it.
Actually, you were not.
No,
Yes, we did.
excuse me, if I could just say this, Rich, we talked about sticking to the open meeting law violation. Let's not digress off of this. Let's just stay focused to the violation.
I've run the meeting, okay, and I'm making my comment. So, I'm running the meeting, right?
Sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Shows the colors right to the end. So, but I am going to make the comment because what you said earlier was incorrect, Alan. I spoke to Mr. Getman, and as I said at the meeting, Mr. Getman did not ask for this. David asked Mr. Getman if the DCR would comment. That's what he said. I asked Mr. Getman directly. And he said, David, I was talking to David about other things. They were looking for reports on Title V inspections. And David asked me if the DCR would be willing to make the comment. So we digress from the open meeting law, but only because you made that statement. And I spoke to Mr. Getman personally, and he contradicted that statement. So getting back to the open meeting law violation. First of all, in order to have an open meeting law violation, you have to have, one, you have to have a meeting, and two, you have to have deliberation. In the complaint itself, it actually states that there wasn't a meeting. He states two other members of the board never saw the letter until the occasion of the April meeting. So if there's no meeting, you can't have deliberation. So I do not believe that there is an open meeting law violation. I would, in my comments, recommend a resolution to this, though. In my resolution, I would suggest that the board write a letter back to the DCR explaining that Alan acted on his own, that the opinions expressed in his request are not those of the board, and that the specific regulation cited is done out of context, and that the letter is misleading. I would be happy with just saying that Alan acted on his own, because Mr. Getman stated straight up to me that he believed that the board discussed this at an open meeting and made a decision to ask the DCR for comment. And I believe that because that was stated to me, that needs to be cleared up.
And that's, all I'm saying is that's not on the public record.
It's on the public record now, I just said it. If you want me to ask Mr. Getman to come in, I will. We can continue it. But that's my recommendation.
So read
I make a
that.
motion that we write that letter.
Well, I'm going to second that motion. You have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
What's the clear motion?
The motion is that we write a letter to the DCR, specifically Kelly Frieda, but we should CC Mr. Getman, clarifying that this letter was not written on behalf of the board, that it was written by you, and the opinions expressed in the letter are yours and not the board's.
That's-
You good? Okay, so that's the motion. The motion and second. Any further discussion? No.
I think, I mean, you,
No.
Discussion?
No.
Okay. So all those in favor?
I said aye.
Lane, aye. So we will write the letter. That's our resolution that we're going to put forward. We will have to also provide that to Mr. Menon in the AG's office. The other thing we have to decide is, as a board, did we violate the open meeting law? Did we violate the open meeting law? I don't believe that we did. I don't believe that this was a violation of the open meeting law. So,
No, I mean, they said nobody met, so that's,
yeah.
I agree, it has to be a meeting, you have to deliberate.
Okay. So we'll make that a part. I'd entertain a motion to that effect.
A second.
No, I entertain the motion. Somebody else has to make the motion.
Oh, I motion that it wasn't a violation of the open meeting law?
Okay?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
I said aye.
Hoffman,
Lane, aye. Okay. And at this point, I want to open this discussion up to the public. If the public has any comments on this particular issue concerning the open meeting law, I would entertain those comments. Can you come up, Joe?
Joseph King, Elliott Road. One other suggestion about the letter you proposed that I agree you should write. I would recommend that at your next meeting, you bring that back and you read it into the record so that everybody knows that it was jointly agreed by your board before you send that back to the DCR.
Yeah, that would be a good idea, and pretty much that's what we would have to do anyways, because we didn't write the letter here, it's not in front of the board, so.
Correct. So just bringing it up so you don't fall into the same condition.
Gotcha, thank you,
You
Jim.
just discussed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. All right. So we'll have to put that in our response to Mr. Menon as well, that the board voted that it's not an actual open meeting law violation.
Now, do we now to try to decide what our agenda is for the next meeting?
Well, first we have public session,
Okay.
and then we'll do that. So we're going to open the floor to public session. If you'd like to speak, please go to the podium, state your name, and no public session? Okay. All right, so now we'll review the future agenda items and meeting date.
The next meeting will be June 13th, 6 p.m.
Actually, I'm going to make a recommendation that we have a meeting sooner. Now, it's very clear why I'm here and why Gail is here. We have both, and I can't speak for you, so if I speak out of line, let me know, but we both made it known when we were running for this position that it was our intent to rescind the deep observation hole regulation. And I would like to do that as soon as possible. We can't do it at this meeting because it was not on the agenda, and it is an actionable item, so we need to put it on the agenda. I would like, this is Chapter 111, Section 31, it's a copy of the law that allows boards of health to enact reasonable health regulations. It's basically divided into 4 parts. The first part allows the boards to make reasonable health regulations, and the notice for those reasonable health regulations has to be published once in a newspaper of general circulation. The second part refers to health regulations that exceed Title V. That's more complicated. If you want to exceed Title V, you have to publish it twice in a newspaper and then have a public hearing. And then the statute also refers to any health regulations that might impact agriculture or farming, and you'd have to just notify the Agricultural Commission and give them 45 days to have input. In the last part, the fourth part, concerns health emergencies and allows the boards of health to implement emergency regulations. So a regulation that would remove the deep observation hole does not exceed Title V. So we could speak about it at a meeting, advertise it in the paper, and then it would take effect after that. There is not a requirement for a second notice or a public hearing for that particular thing. And because we are here, and this was such a big issue for the town, I'm going to propose that we meet next Thursday and have on the agenda to review, rescind, rewrite, and vote on Sterling subsurface disposal system regulations. So our next meeting will be May 30th, a week from today, and we will discuss that.
Where do you, where in here do you see that there's no need for publication?
No, I didn't say no need for publication. We do have to publish it once in the newspaper of general circulation.
And how many days before you hold?
It doesn't give you a date, number of days. So if you read the very first paragraph,
Yeah.
it says, "Boards of health may make reasonable health regulations. A summary which shall describe the substance of any regulation made by a board of health under this chapter shall be published once in a newspaper of general circulation in the city or town, and such publication shall be noticed to all persons." And from there on, it starts talking about regulations that exceed Title V. So most health regulations only have to be published in the newspaper once.
Okay. And when are you proposing to do that?
Right after our meeting next week. Once we decide on the wording, then we will publish it in the
So you're gonna
newspaper.
publish it in a week? I'm trying to,
I can't publish what I don't know what it's going to say yet.
Yeah, but on the other hand, there has to be a time interval after the publication before a vote to rescind.
No. I disagree with you.
So you could publish it on the day you rescind? I don't think you can do that.
So,
I don't think you can do that.
I'm not sure what you're saying.
Well, you have to publish a notice, right?
No. You would have to publish a notice, you're thinking of a public hearing. You have to publish a notice that you're having a public hearing. But what this notice is telling people that you've instituted a regulation. So see, it says, "A summary which shall describe the substance of any regulation made by a board of health under this chapter shall be published once in a newspaper of general circulation in the city or town." So how could you publish it beforehand if you haven't established the regulation?
Well, regulation is going to delete the previous regulation. You're deleting the regulation, I don't think it's compliant.
I believe I am. I believe it is in compliance.
So, if you publish it, what's the interval between when you publish it and when you hold the meeting? There has to be an interval there. You can't publish it on the day or...
There's the chapter and section, you tell me.
Is the board looking at one specific citation within the regulation? Or are they looking at trying to remodel or reevaluate all of the regulation?
I'm going to propose that we remodel all the regulations.
Would you like to make that a motion?
No, we can't right now, because this is an actionable item, it has to be on the agenda, which is why we can't do it at this
What do you
meeting.
mean by all regulations?
The Sterling subsurface disposal regulations.
Regulation or regulations?
All the Sterling subsurface disposal regulations.
Do you have a list of what that is? That we can look
We're going to
at?
read it and look over it.
I think what he's saying is Sterling's local regulations, and my question was is it just the observation hole that they're looking to change, or is it the entire Sterling local regulation? And it sounds like the entire Sterling regulations, they want to look at it and modify all of it, not just one citation or one
Well, that's my
section.
question,
Yeah.
That's what I answered. All the Sterling subsurface disposal system regulations will be reviewed.
I think you have to that requires public notice, I'm sure.
Not if they don't exceed Title V. So if you continue to read, it says, "No regulation or amendment hereto which relates to the minimum requirements for subsurface disposal of sanitary sewage as provided by the state environmental code, shall be adopted until such time as the Board of Health shall hold a public hearing thereon. So you have to refer back to relates to the minimum requirements. That's the only time you have to hold a public hearing.
I think that should be run by town council.
I'm confident.
Well, you being confident doesn't mean town council will agree to that. I propose that you run this whole idea, because it's not specific as to what you're going to notice. The notice you've described is not specific to what regulations you're pertaining to. And you're saying all of them.
The notice, which will go out, a summary of what we decide at the next meeting, will go out into a newspaper. And once it is published in the newspaper, shall be noticed to all persons. That's what the law says. So that's what we're going to do.
And
That's-
what's the
I don't mind
integral,
checking with town council.
what's the integral
I'm not
between,
that sure, but I don't know, I'm not that sure, I'm new here.
Okay?
I'm the newbie on the block.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the integral is between when you publish it and when you act. I think town council's gonna have a lot of problems. You've got to identify, when you publish it, exactly what you're gonna eliminate.
No, we have to publish a summary.
Summary,
That's what the law says, Alan. It says
yeah,
right
but
here.
a summary, the summary has to be exact, so the person reading the notice can clearly understand what's being proposed. To say,
I think if I looked in the dictionary and I looked up the word summary, the word exact would not be in the definition. But
I
All-
disagree.
all regulations will be reviewed by town council.
Rich.
Hold on a second. Anything else to add, David? Anything else to add? Alan, anything else to add?
Well, I don't think a lack of, if you said, we're gonna eliminate whatever the number is, you gotta be specific. You can't just go and say, we're gonna eliminate whatever we want to do.
The regulation will be specific. The summary that's in the newspaper will be just that, a summary. And, I would propose that we link the new regulations, put a link to the new regulations in the summary, that people can look it up then.
I've spent a lot of time in court cases.
Me too.
I don't,
All right.
So are we gonna go to legal, are we gonna check with legal counsel?
Yeah.
Okay.
Legal reviews all regulations anyways. That's standard operating procedure. I would not put forth a regulation without town council looking at it.
Is your
Yeah.
question though, to go to legal with the regulation, or is your question the timeline?
The timeline.
Okay. So
I wanna
yours,
make sure we're covered.
Okay, it's right there though.
Yeah, I know.
Right there in black and white. But, okay.
Legal,
All right.
yeah, but legal, sometimes they can read multiple ways. How I read it would not be how a lawyer would read it. So that's why I say, I know it's very plain to me, but that might not be really plain.
Okay. We can have the town council review and advise if I am interpreting the statute properly.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Laura Ritchie, 50 Bean Road. I just want to make sure you guys are covering your butts, okay, because of what was voted on in the town meeting about the newspaper stuff versus US mail, okay? Because
Yeah.
you're saying you're going to put stuff in the newspaper, nobody reads the newspapers.
Yeah.
Didn't the town pass that you have to put everything in the mail?
Now, Article 26 specifically referred to regulations that exceed Title V. So if this board put forth a regulation that exceeded Title V, then we would have to send a letter to each taxpayer.
Okay,
So if it doesn't exceed Title V, then there's no need to send it.
Okay,
Because if it doesn't exceed Title V, we have to follow it anyways, because Title V says that,
okay.
right? Does that make
I
sense?
just want everybody in
Yeah.
the public to know,
Yeah, I've actually been asked about that,
just making it clear, making it public.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So there's nothing else on the agenda. I have a motion to adjourn.
Well, do we have to discuss the agenda for next week, and the agenda is just this?
That will be enough. Well,
Yeah.
before we post the agenda, my policy is going to be to reach out to members of the board and ask if they want anything put on the agenda. So-
What's the date?
May 30th.
I may not be able to be here, my wife has health issues.
So as it stands right now, May 30th, 6 PM.
Do you want to try to make it 29th for him?
It is,
Yes.
is that a better day, Alan?
Does the 29th work for you? I mean, we could do different nights. It doesn't have to be a Thursday night just because we normally meet on a Thursday.
The other thing is we have to look at the town calendar too.
Somebody else might be using the room. Oh, yeah, that's true.
It's not holidays, 30.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna have uncertainty within in the next week that I can't resolve it. So-
Well, as I look right now, the 29th and the 30th are open. So if one of those days is better than the other,
I can't tell you at
Okay.
this point in time.
all right, so,
So, I mean, let's go with May 30th. If I can't make it, I can't make it.
okay. Okay,
So we'll post a meeting for May 30th, 6 PM, and it will have at this point in time, unless other things come about, a one agenda item.
yes.
And a response from town council.
I-
I mean,
Okay.
we need that.
All right, Alan.
So if I could just add, and if I could just continue on with dates, our traditional meeting will be June 13th.
Yeah.
Okay, which is 3 weeks out from today's date. We have scheduled public hearings for variance requests, meaning butters need to be notified via certified mail 10 days. So we've begun that process. I'd like to hold that date as well.
Yes, definitely, yeah. Motion to adjourn. You have to make the motion.
Oh, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, there is no discussion. All those in favor?
Pass it aye.
Partner.
Lane, aye. We are adjourned.